Who delivers lunch just to solve a problem 10 scientists couldn't and end up changing her life forever? Emily Lane wasn't looking for attention. She was just trying to survive another shift with her 5-year-old son in tow. But when a broken elevator led her into a top-secret lab and a desperate conversation, she said something that stopped the room cold, including the Millionaire CEO who hadn't smiled in weeks. What began as a simple act of kindness became the turning point no one saw coming. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. The soup was leaking. Again. Emily bit her tongue as she held the paper bag tighter, trying not to cry in front of her son. The metal container inside was warm against her skin, but the cheap lid had popped loose during the bike ride, and now her last delivery of the day was dripping lentil curry onto her coat sleeve. "Great. Just great," Mom whispered Theo, tugging on her sleeve. "Can we go home after this?" His little voice was hoarse. The cold wind had reddened his cheeks and his tiny sneakers were soaked. Emily looked down at him, 5 years old, smart as a whip, tired from a long day of kindergarten and bouncing between cafes and apartment lobbies with her. "We will, baby," she said gently. "Just one more. Then we'll watch a movie. Popcorn and everything." Theo smiled faintly, holding tighter to her hand as they stepped into the tall glass building. The receptionist didn't look up. Emily scanned the order slip again, level 14. Bluke or Innovations. Lab access. Authorized only. She pressed the elevator button. Nothing. Of course. She turned to the guard at the desk. "Hi, sorry, is the elevator out?" "Maintenance issue," he grunted. "Stairs only." Emily blinked. 14 floors. "You want the tip or not?" he said without looking at her. Theo coughed softly. Emily crouched beside him. "You think you can do this?" 14 floors. Theo looked up the stairwell, then nodded with the bravery only kids had when their moms were watching. It took them 11 minutes, 2 rests, and half a bottle of water. By the time they reached the top, Emily was sweating through her jacket and Theo's backpack strap had left a red mark across his shoulder. She knocked on the lab door, still trying to catch her breath. The door opened, but no one greeted her. Voices echoed from the other end of the hall, sharp and tense. "I said it won't hold under that pressure. We've run the numbers 10 times. It should have worked with the recalibrated thresholds. Unless the model itself is wrong and none of you want to admit it." Emily stood frozen. Behind the glass, she saw a group of people in white coats huddled around a large digital screen. A drone model hovered half disassembled on a surgical table. Schematics lined the walls. The atmosphere was electric and exhausted all at once. Theo pressed his face to the glass. "They look like robots," he whispered. Emily tried to smile, but she felt small. The building, the stress, the pressure in that room, it all screamed that she didn't belong here. But someone had ordered lentil soup, and she wasn't about to miss her tip. She cleared her throat and stepped inside. "Hi, sorry, delivery for, Dr. Kern?" She offered the bag with a half-apologetic, half-frozen smile. The room paused. A tall man in a gray sweater turned around. His dark hair was slightly messy and his expression unreadable, but his eyes flicked to the bag, then to her son, then back to her. "No one's eating," someone muttered. "Not until we fix the drop imbalance." Another voice, a woman's, sharp added, "Unless a miracle walks through the door, we're scrapping this week's tests." Emily didn't know what she was thinking. Maybe it was the fact that Theo was cold. Maybe it was that she had studied this stuff once before everything fell apart. Or maybe it was just that she hated seeing tired people yell about things that, deep down, she still loved. She glanced at the model on the screen, frowning. "It's oscillating because your feedback loop's overcorrecting," she said before she could stop herself. "You're chasing stability, but the inputs keep swinging wider every time you compensate. It's not the pressure. It's the algorithm trying too hard to be perfect." Silence. Absolute silence. 10 people stared at her. The tall man stepped forward slowly. "What did you just say?" Emily flushed. Sorry. I studied systems theory at Wycliffe. Years ago. I just recognized the pattern from my old coursework. That's all. Someone pulled up a simulation window. Run that. No way. She's right, someone else said, disbelief dripping from every syllable. The loop's recalibrating. Look. Theo tugged her sleeve. Are we in trouble? No, baby, Emily whispered. I think we're not. She didn't notice that the tall man was still looking at her, not at the soup, not at the model, but at her. As if he hadn't seen a real person in weeks. As if something in her voice had jolted him awake. He stepped forward, slowly, hand outstretched. I'm Nathan. Emily took it. Emily. He glanced at Theo. And? Theo, her son said shyly, peeking out from behind her. Nathan crouched slightly to meet his eyes. Thanks for helping your mom bring lunch today, Theo. Theo nodded seriously. She's smart. Nathan looked back up at Emily, smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I'm starting to see that. She hadn't meant to return. Emily told herself it was a one-time thing, a lucky guess, a spark from an old life that didn't belong to her anymore. But the very next day, Bluecore Innovations called the delivery company and requested her by name. And not just for lunch. For a consultation. What does that mean? She asked, clutching the phone with flour-dusted fingers. She had picked up a baking shift that morning, trying to make up for rent. Means they want to talk to you, the dispatcher said. And they'll pay you double for the visit. Triple if you stay more than an hour. She hesitated, then looked over at Theo, crouched by the window with his puzzle book, brow furrowed in concentration. Text me the address, she said. Bluecore's lab looked different when she wasn't carrying soup. This time, she walked in with her hair brushed, Theo in clean jeans beside her, and a strange knot in her chest that wasn't fear, not exactly. It was like walking into a dream she'd half forgotten she had permission to want. Nathan was waiting just inside. Same soft sweater, same unreadable expression, except now, when he smiled, it actually reached his eyes. We ran your correction all night, he said. It worked. You stabilized a prototype we've been stuck on for 3 weeks. I just said what made sense, she mumbled. He shook his head. No. You saw what we missed. 10 of the best minds in this building and a delivery girl with a tired son solved it in 30 seconds. Her stomach twisted at the word, delivery girl. But then he added, that was impressive. Not because it was unexpected, but because you were right. Emily cleared her throat. I can't stay long. Just a few questions. 5 minutes. She nodded, gripping Theo's hand. Nathan guided them to a smaller lab room, less crowded, warmer. A soft couch in the corner. A few monitors. A table covered in printouts. He pulled out a chair for her. Theo settled on the couch and began quietly assembling a small stack of magnetic tiles someone must have left for him. As if they'd known she might bring him. Emily sat. Nathan didn't sit right away. He leaned on the edge of the desk instead, arms crossed loosely, watching her with something like curiosity, but not the kind that made her feel small. The kind that made her feel seen. You studied systems theory? He asked. Wycliffe Tech, she nodded. 3 years. Then, life. Graduated? No, she said quietly. My mom got sick. Then I got pregnant. Had to pick groceries over finals. He didn't flinch. Just nodded slowly. You ever think about going back? She gave a half laugh. Every day. But going back doesn't pay the heating bill. This does. She glanced at Theo. Nathan followed her gaze. How old is he? 5. He's sharp. Emily smiled. He gets that from his dad. She didn't elaborate. Nathan didn't press. Instead, he tapped one of the monitors. We're stuck on another sequence. Similar issue. Too many autocorrections. Too few constraints. You want me to look at it? She asked, blinking. He nodded. Something shifted then. Her hands moved without thinking, skimming lines of code, tracing system maps on the touchscreen, pointing out where signals tangled and spiraled. Her words changed. Her eyes lit up. Nathan didn't interrupt once. And when she finished, when she sat back, breathless from her own momentum. He said simply, "We could use someone like you." Emily froze. "I'm not qualified." "You're more than qualified. You're intuitive, sharp, and honest. You see what we can't, because you haven't been trained to ignore it." She shook her head. "I don't have a degree. I don't even have a babysitter." Nathan tilted his head. "We have a flexible team. A family room upstairs. You can bring Theo. Test it out. Just come in for a week. No pressure. Full pay. If it's not for you, you walk." She hesitated. "I can't promise anything," she said. "That's okay," he replied. "I'm not asking for a promise. Just a chance." She started the following Monday. The lab made space for her, literally. A desk beside the observation window. A nameplate. A chair for Theo, who sat quietly nearby each day, surrounded by coloring books and Legos. She arrived unsure, but by the third day, something inside her began to soften. Felt almost like trust. Nathan visited her corner every afternoon, sometimes with questions, sometimes just with coffee. They didn't talk about work at first. They talked about Theo, about late-night cartoons, about how she used to bake for 3 jobs and crash at midnight with flour in her hair, about how Nathan hadn't slept properly in months, ever since his last lead engineer resigned and the investors threatened to pull half their funding. "You don't look like someone who's afraid of failure," Emily had said one day, squinting at the debug window. Nathan gave a dry smile. "No, but I am afraid of people forgetting how to fix it." That night, Theo fell asleep in the beanbag chair with robot schematics on his lap. Nathan carried him to Emily's car. She buckled him in without waking him. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For treating us like we belong here." Nathan closed the car door gently. His breath fogged in the evening air. "You do," he said. "You really do." Emily didn't know what to say, so she drove away with her heart thudding in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with something she hadn't felt in years: hope. By the end of the first week, the prototype was working better than it had in 2 months. Emily had contributed to 3 separate breakthroughs, rewritten 2 models, and redesigned the system's core response algorithm in a way that left the original team speechless. No one laughed at the girl from the delivery app anymore, but she didn't let it get to her head. Emily still packed snacks for Theo every morning, still took the bus when her bike chain slipped, still wiped noses and checked math homework between simulations. She was used to being 2 people at once, mother and worker, protector and dreamer, and she had no plans to let one consume the other. Still, something was changing, especially between her and Nathan. It wasn't just the way he looked at her now, like someone he'd been searching for without realizing it, or how often he stopped by her station, even when he had no technical reason to. It was the quiet things, like how he remembered Theo's favorite snack and started keeping it in the kitchenette. How he once stayed late just to help her finish testing because she looked tired and didn't ask for help. How he stood between her and the cameras when a reporter came by unannounced. And then, there was the moment he reached for her hand without thinking. It was a Friday evening. Most of the staff had already left. The lights were dimmed, the lab humming in quiet mode. Theo was curled up on the couch with a blanket, drifting into sleep after an unusually long day. Nathan had walked her through a visualization model, and at the end of it, without pomp, without performance, he said, "I don't know what this place would be like without you." Emily laughed softly. "Running more efficiently, probably." "No," he said, "I mean it." And then his fingers brushed hers. Not accidentally, not clumsily, just lightly, like he needed to know if it was real. She didn't pull away, but she didn't move forward either, because something about it scared her. Not him, herself. That weekend, they didn't see each other. She texted once. He didn't push. They both knew the air between them was full of things unsaid, and it was still too soon. But the following Monday, a new kind of tension settled in. It started when Emily arrived and saw the people in suits waiting in the lounge. Corporate, investors, the type of people who never carried coffee cups because someone else always held them. Nathan met her at the door. His smile was tight, his shoulders straighter than usual. "They're here to evaluate project viability," he said quietly. "Just do what you do." Emily nodded, heart pounding. Theo clung to her side, sensing the pressure in the air. The suits didn't talk to her directly, but they watched. One leaned over and whispered something to another as she presented her latest iteration. Another tapped a pen when she corrected a simulation in real time. Their eyes were full of questions they didn't ask aloud, the kind that weren't about science. That afternoon, Nathan found her in the break room. "They're impressed," he said. Emily didn't look up. "Doesn't feel like it. They want numbers, credentials. They want to know why someone who doesn't have a degree is outperforming their hires." She turned, arms crossed. "And what did you say?" "I told them you see things no one else does, that you make our work better, and that they can either invest in progress or walk away from something bigger than they understand." Emily blinked. He stepped closer. "I meant it." She searched his face for sarcasm, doubt, ego. Found none. Just truth. And something else. Something that made her forget about the suits and the money and the years she thought she'd lost. Something that felt dangerously like trust. But the world doesn't change in a vacuum. That night, Emily received an email. No subject line. No sender name. Just text. "Your son deserves better than this. People are talking. Do the right thing and walk away before it gets worse." Her blood ran cold. She looked over at Theo, asleep in a tangle of blankets and books, then back at the screen, and something in her, something old and bruised and all too familiar, twisted. She didn't tell Nathan, didn't tell anyone, just came in the next morning as usual. But her shoulders were stiffer, her voice quieter, her smile slower to rise. Nathan noticed. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just tired." "You sure?" Emily nodded, but she wasn't. The message came again. Different email. Same threat. Slightly crueler. And this time with a photo. A picture of her and Nathan, standing too close near the lab window. Theo playing in the background. Taken from outside. That night she didn't sleep. She packed up all the printouts she had brought home, backed up her files, cleared her desk the next day before noon. And when Nathan came to check in on her, she was already holding her coat. "Leaving early?" he asked, brow furrowed. Emily hesitated, then lied. "Theo's not feeling great." Nathan stepped forward. "Want me to walk you down?" "No," she said, a little too fast. "We're fine." He studied her. She wouldn't meet his eyes. And as the elevator doors closed behind her, something in his chest went quiet. That evening he checked the lab cameras. She hadn't gone to the front desk. She'd used the back exit. He replayed the footage, paused on her face. And for the first time in a long time, Nathan Reed, genius, innovator, millionaire founder, realized he didn't know what to do, because the person who had helped him see everything clearly was slipping away into silence. She didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. Nathan called, twice, Left a message. Nothing too dramatic. Just, hope you're okay. Let me know if you need anything. He tried not to overthink it. People needed space. Maybe she was sick. Maybe Theo was. But the silence stretched. He emailed, then texted. No response. By the fourth day, he gave up pretending he was just being professional. He drove to her building. It wasn't hard to find, she'd mentioned it once in passing. A red brick walk-up on a quiet street with bikes chained to the railing and chalk drawings smeared across the sidewalk. He stood outside with 2 cups of coffee, one hand in his coat pocket, trying to decide what he'd even say. But she didn't answer the buzzer. A neighbor with a stroller eyed him warily. You looking for Emily? He nodded. She's been gone since Tuesday. Took the kid and a suitcase. Did she say where? Nope. Just said she needed a break. Nathan's throat tightened. Thanks. The woman shrugged and pushed the stroller down the street. He stood there for a long time before turning away. Emily hadn't run. Not really. But she had packed everything that mattered, a few changes of clothes, Theo's favorite blanket, the small elephant charm her mother had given her in college, and taken a train out of the city. A friend from school had a guest room. Quiet, near the coast. Far from buildings full of glass and pressure and whispers. She hadn't planned to disappear. But the second message had shaken her. The photo. The threat. The implication that her life and Theo's was public property again. That someone somewhere was waiting to twist it into something ugly. She knew the story. The single mom who slept her way into genius labs. The unqualified assistant influencing million-dollar tech. The CEO's new charity case. It wouldn't matter that none of it was true. It never did. So she stepped away. To protect her son. To protect herself. And maybe, if she was being honest, to see if anyone would even notice. By the 5th day, she stopped checking her phone. She didn't expect the letter. Not from Nathan. It arrived with no return address, folded in a plain white envelope and slipped under the door of her friend's house like a secret. Just 1 page. No demands. No questions. Only this. You saw a problem no one else could fix and you solved it without needing credit or applause. That's not just brilliance, that's courage. You said you didn't belong in our world. But maybe our world is just catching up to yours. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe. But I also hope you come back. Not because the lab needs you, though it does. But because I miss you. And I think we had more to say. No signature. But she didn't need one. She sat on the floor, the letter shaking in her hand, while Theo built a tower of cereal boxes behind her. He looked up. Are you crying? She wiped her face. Just a little. Did someone hurt you? No, she whispered. Someone saw me. Theo tilted his head. Like, for real? She nodded. And that night, she packed again. But this time not to run. To return. When she stepped into the building again, everything felt different. Not louder. Not colder. Just more real. She didn't announce herself. Just rode the elevator to the top floor and stood in the hallway where it had all started, curry-stained bag and all, and waited. The door opened slowly. Nathan stood there, expression unreadable. Emily held her breath. I didn't know what to say, she said. He nodded. Then say whatever you need now. She stepped inside. Theo followed, dragging his backpack. The room was quiet. A few heads turned. Someone gasped softly. But no one moved. Nathan looked at her. Are you here to work? She shook her head. Not unless I can bring all of me this time. Not just the part that solves things. Nathan's voice was steady. That's the only version I ever wanted. They stood in silence for a beat longer. The kind that's not really silence at all, just 2 people hearing everything for the first time. And then he smiled. Not the half-smile from before, but something full. Whole. Like exhaling after holding his breath for weeks. You're late, he said softly. Emily smiled back. You'll survive. That afternoon. She sat in her old chair. The same monitor, the same model. But something had shifted. Her nameplate was still there. So was a new cup on the desk with Theo's name scribbled on it in green marker. Nathan brought her coffee. Again. No words this time. Just presence. They didn't speak of feelings. Not yet. But something in the air was different. Like the first line of code after a crash, the heartbeat that tells you the system isn't gone. Just waiting. Winter came fast. Snow blurred the city skyline, coating steel and glass with something soft. Emily had started bringing a thermos of hot cocoa for Theo in the mornings and spare socks in her bag, just in case. The lab installed a new family-friendly space upstairs, couches, puzzles, even a beanbag chair embroidered with Theo's name. They never spoke about the emails again. But Nathan quietly increased security. Cameras, encrypted lines, and a firm instruction: if anyone asks about her, they answer to me. It wasn't protective in the controlling way. It was respect. One afternoon, as Emily was reviewing data, Theo wandered up beside her with a crayon drawing in hand, two stick figures beside a tall blue drone, and one of them had hair that looked suspiciously like hers. "Who's this?" she asked. He pointed. "That's you. That's Mr. Nathan. That's the flying robot we fixed." "We?" Theo nodded solemnly. "You and him. You fixed it together." Emily smiled, but her chest ached in the warmest way. Nathan passed behind them then, catching only the tail end of the conversation. He looked at the drawing. "Is that me?" Theo grinned. "You look serious." "I usually am," Nathan said. Then glanced at Emily. "Except lately." The project passed its final test 2 weeks later. The drone hovered perfectly for 11 minutes in a wind tunnel simulation, responsive, balanced, steady under pressure. It was everything the investors had hoped for and more. But Emily didn't join the celebration on the main floor. She was on the rooftop, letting the cold wind sting her cheeks, her breath curling in soft spirals. Nathan found her there. "You should be inside," he said. "This is your win too." She looked at him, hair pulled loose from the wind. "I never cared about credit. I wanted to see something fly." He stepped beside her. And it did. A long silence passed. The city glowed beneath them. "Do you ever stop and wonder how you got here?" she asked quietly. "How a few wrong turns can lead somewhere, right?" Nathan exhaled. "All the time. I used to think I failed," she said. "Dropping out. Becoming a mom alone. Delivering food while watching people do the kind of work I thought I'd never touch again." "You didn't fail," Nathan said, looking at her. "You survived. You adapted. And then you saved an entire team of overpaid engineers from intellectual disaster." She laughed softly. "I didn't do it alone." "No," he said. "You didn't." He reached for her hand again. And this time she didn't hesitate. She held it, fingers laced in his, steady and warm. "People will still talk," she said. "Then let them. You'll get questions. Headlines. Rumors. I'll handle them. And what if it gets messy?" Nathan smiled. "Then we get messy. Together." She turned to face him fully, their joined hands a quiet answer to everything unspoken between them. "Okay," she said. "Together." And then, for the first time, not in passing, not in a rush, not in fear, he kissed her. Slowly, carefully, completely. Like something earned, not assumed. Like the final piece falling into place after 1,000 small, careful recalibrations. In the months that followed, their lives didn't become perfect. But they became real. Theo started a science club at school. Emily was offered a permanent position on the systems team. Nathan, ever the innovator, began working fewer late nights and more early mornings with coffee, cocoa, and stolen glances over data logs. Sometimes they argued. Over bedtime, over code bugs, over which dinosaur Theo liked best. Sometimes they laughed until it hurt. Once, when Theo got sick, Nathan stayed up all night holding a cold washcloth to his forehead, no suit. No ego, just a man who had found something that mattered more than deadlines. And one morning, Emily found a sticky note on her laptop. It read, "You didn't just fix a system. You rewrote the way I see the world." She tucked it into her notebook right next to Theo's drawing of the flying robot. and smiled. The final prototype launched 6 months later. A sleek, responsive drone with code built on a logic map written partially by a single mother who once delivered soup with a broken lid. News outlets tried to spin the story. They called her a prodigy, a Cinderella, a disruption. But Emily didn't care what they called her anymore. She had a child who believed in her, a man who respected her, and a future she'd carved with her own hands. That was more than enough. And when they asked her to speak at the launch press event, she stood behind the podium, heart-pounding, Nathan watching her with quiet pride, and said only this: "I was just trying to deliver lunch. I didn't mean to change anything. But sometimes all it takes is one person in the right place, saying what no one else dares to see." She stepped back, took Theo's hand, looked at Nathan, and smiled like someone who finally knew exactly where she belonged.